that's what we're going. Recording in progress. So now that we're recording, I will officially introduce myself again. My name is Kiana Taylor. I am a resident of the town of Brentwood, and last year in May, I was elected as councilwoman. I've worked in the town for a long time. I started working in the town in 2011. So I have over a decade with being invested in this community. We have a Black History Month program every year, and we usually try to kind of stay within the theme that has been decided for that year. This year's theme was Black Health and Wellness. Oh, look at my senator joining the meeting. This year's theme is Black Health and Wellness. Hello, Senator Augustine.
You may not be able to hear us yet because his audio is connecting.
But this year's theme is Black Health and Wellness. And so I wrote, hello, how are you, sir?
Hi, how's everybody doing?
We are well. Thank you for joining.
Good, absolutely.
I didn't realize that there was such a, and I should have, but I didn't realize that there was such a legacy of Black women doing like midwifery. And how, for a period of time, they sort of kind of help keep it alive. And so that's probably what kind of planted the seed to have this conversation. But there are so many disparities that we see with Black women in the medical institution, the medical field. I think the last stat I saw that said Black women die at like 3 times the rate of white women in childbirth. I've seen some pretty recent stats to say that children just medically fare significantly better when they have access to Black healthcare professionals. And so there are lots of ways that a lot of folks are being left out. So the point of this conversation is just to let people know that they have resources, to let people know that they're not alone in dealing with anything that they're dealing with, that there are systems of support, and that when there isn't one present, there are ways to find. So the panel today, we have Ms. Tashira Monroe, who is, and I'll actually read all the bios once we get everybody or get more people on, but Tashira is our home birth advocate. We have Danawa Alberti, who is a full spectrum doula. We have
it's a long A, Danawa.
Danawa.
Yeah.
Danawa.
Thank you.
She's a full spectrum doula. We have Miss Khadija Jones, who is a lactation specialist, and we have Katie, who is a midwife. And so we're just gonna kind of talk today. We'll give it a few more minutes and see if some folks come on. But while we're waiting, Senator Augustine, is there anything that you would like to say while we have you on the line?
No, I'm just here to be supportive. I want to hear what's going on. I'm just
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, absolutely.
Thank you. I think we just have somebody else coming on. So while we're waiting, because I feel like I've been talking a lot, why don't each of you ladies tell us kind of how you found your way into your specific kind of support role for pregnant women? We'll start with Tashira, because on my screen, you're right beside me.
Okay, sure. My field of work is I started off as an educator, but now I'm in the field of social work, and I work with survivors of domestic violence and their children. And so I see a lot, and I have learned a lot in my tenure. But I'm always and have always been huge on women empowerment, supporting women. Women do it all. We are career women. We are still breeding and putting lives on the earth, and still have a very high expectation with it's improving, but still very low support. I am a huge advocate of open forums, loud advocacy, and just being truthful and honest. I don't mind talking about the most uncomfortable things because it's not uncomfortable for me. And what it does is open doors for others. So if we want to talk about a vagina and what happens when you give birth, let's talk about it. If we want to talk about the things that no one tells you about that I wish I would have known, let's do it. There's a lot of, it's a strange thing because there's a lot of shame in something that's so natural. And it's actually frightening. And I remember thinking, I shouldn't be afraid to go to the doctor. I shouldn't be afraid to tell the doctor of what my wants are. And I also would want the opposite to happen, for me to be able to share my fears about anything and everything, from will my relationship change when I have a baby with my partner, or is it okay? Like what happens after? What's happening during? And so what's led me here is from my education background, seeing how everyone kind of, especially in the Black community, we move with trepidation in every step we take. From walking into a restaurant and assessing, do we belong here, to walking into a hospital when our body is taking over and saying, you're about to give birth, and can you do it safely? And I chose to do it from the comfort of my home because I did used to work in a hospital, and I did see the discrepancies and the disparities and the disbelief when someone says that they're feeling this thing, but they're told that it's not true or it's not as they think. Don't worry about it. But I am worried, and how are you going to set me straight so I can do what I need to do? And so my partner and I, Council Member Monroe, before he was council member, actually did the research and found a midwifery practice. And we were fortunate enough to live in an area that allows a midwifery, and found professional nurse midwives. I find that a lot of folks kind of reduce. They go to college like doctors, probably even more, and continuing education. And so I've had such pleasant experiences, and I do agree it's not for everyone, but I do think that especially women of color need to know what their options are. It's often taken away from us without even asking if we want it. And so I will shout from the rooftops to make sure that we start to address maternal and infant mortality head on.
Thank you so much. Khadijah, did you want to go next, love?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Khadijah. I want to first say thank you all for being here. Also, thank you to the town of Brentwood for this event. For me, I was a young mom, and I was 20 years old when I gave birth to my daughter, and my birth was very traumatic. I really didn't have many options and many choices. I didn't have a voice, and it propelled me into advocacy. I've always been an activist in my own right because I do believe that people should advocate for themselves. If you want ham on your sandwich, if you want turkey, you shouldn't just be given the first option, quite like what Tashira said. So I was determined to breastfeed my child. And honestly, it was the naysayers. I said I was going to breastfeed my daughter, and I was told to go get I was told to go get on WIC and to go get formula because it might not work out. That person who said that to me sparked something in me. And I knew that I don't know what it was. I knew that I had to breastfeed my daughter. I knew that I had to educate myself. And so I would stay up till like 3 a.m. reading, researching books, all types of things. And I'm very social media savvy, so I would just post all my findings on Facebook. And after I had my daughter, I was very successful breastfeeding her, and I would just show all my progress. And people liked that, and they started asking me to come help them. And then I got a message saying, we would like to offer you a scholarship to actually get formally educated, certified, trained, all of that for free. And I busted out crying because I just felt like it really gave me purpose to breastfeed my daughter and to feel like I could keep her alive. So that's kind of where this came about, and just pretty much just that negative stigma, and also the statistics that show that Black women do breastfeed their children at lower rates than our white counterparts. And just knowing that if I can do it, I can maybe hopefully motivate, inspire, and educate, because the foundation of what I do is education, so that people can make informed decisions with evidence-based research. So that's kind of how I got into it. And thank you for telling me I couldn't breastfeed my child, because I'm here. So so that's how I became who I am. So I'm grateful to be here with you all, and thank you, Senator, as well, for being here to listen.
Thank you so much. Danae, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Also, I want to say thank you for even having me to speak. I love this topic. This is what I'm about. So the way that I got into birth work, it's funny that you mentioned like Black women have been doing midwifery forever. I came from a family that their families had like 11 kids and 7 kids. So we're very used to coming together as a community. And just like Khadijah, I had my daughter extremely young. She's 15 now. So as young as I look now, when I was 22, I looked 12, where people didn't listen to me. They didn't, if I said, I remember going to the hospital and saying, I'm having contractions. And they were like, no, you're not. And I'm like, I'm definitely in labor. I know what I'm feeling in my body. And they said that, no, you're not in labor. And I actually refused to leave the hospital until they checked. And they were like, oh, you are in labor. So that kind of sparked that seed of almost 15 years ago that, we're not listened to. They can take one look at us and say, this is what you're experiencing, without actually hearing what we're saying. We can be verbally communicating, this is what's going on, and they can dismiss it. And that can really be between life and death in some sense, in some instances. So the reason that I became a birth doula is, although I love home birth, like Tashira said, I love home birth. A lot of times people who look like us are afraid of taking it on at home. So I made it my mission to be able to be in the hospitals, because you need an extra voice, you need an extra set of eyes, you need an extra set of hands. And also the advocacy portion of letting people know you have choices. They don't have to cut the umbilical cord right away. People don't know that. They kind of take like what they say and they go with it. So just being able to work with women that look like me and letting them know what their options were, that way they have more peace of mind going into the hospitals if that was their choice, was a really big portion of why I decided to do this work that I'm doing now.
I'm listening to everybody's stories, and there's so many things that I want to say right away, but I want to make sure I give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves. So Katie, would you mind just sharing a little bit of your journey with us?
Sure. I am so incredibly honored to be here today. Thank you so much for including me in this. I know Toshira quite well, which is how I joined this call today. But I became a midwife, in 2008. But what sort of led me to midwifery, out of college, I started working in reproductive health care from sort of the political side of things. And I loved that work. I loved working with women. I loved caring for, every woman that walked into the clinic. I was doing counseling, I was doing birth control options, I was assisting in abortion procedures as a tech. And just decided that I really wanted to just, be there for women. I looked into some doula work for a while, but it really just sort of kept leading me back to, really wanting to be in the provider role, and just being able to offer that to people. So I went to nursing school after graduating from college. So it was like a second degree program, and then did a couple of years working as a labor and delivery nurse in a hospital. It was fantastic work. It was hard work. I knew it was not where I wanted to be, but I learned so much and got so much just exposure to what all types of birth can look like. And then went on to midwifery school and did my first home birth as a student and never looked back. I just knew that that's where I needed to be, was in that environment. And so I took a job at a birth center right out of school and did that for a couple of years. It's hard work. It's exhausting work being on call all the time. So after a few years, I took some time off and worked in a family health clinic and did care for mostly people from Central America, which was also fascinating and hard work, but happened between Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So that was a nice break. I had babies during that time, which was great at home. And I just, I think I was a great midwife before I had kids, but I think I became a much more empathetic person and a much more knowledgeable midwife after having kids. I think specifically with regard to breastfeeding, and Khadija, what you do is just so wonderful. And I so appreciate having you in the community to help when women need help. Because I learned a lot about it in school, but until I did it myself, I really had no idea. I had no idea what it was like. And let's see, so in 2020, I guess, I started my own practice with another midwife, and we provide home birth services. I also do intrauterine insemination at home. So I help people get pregnant who maybe are having trouble or who don't have a male partner. And I love this work. I love this work for all. I would love to offer my services to everyone who wants them and who needs them. And I think that if it's the right fit for you, it is absolutely the right place to be. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, ladies. I was scribbling down notes while y'all were talking. Something that I want to kind of pick up on is, it was specifically referenced by Khadija, but also by Katie. We were kind of talking about it before the meeting started, is I think we assume that our bodies will do what they need to do, right? You kind of come into this world and as women, we're kind of taught that like at some point you'll probably get married. And then when you get married, like you need to hurry up and start having kids. And so when women sort of maybe can't jump right into the having kids part, which is what Katie was mentioning with the insemination portion, or when women want to have the option to breastfeed and maybe having a little bit of a struggle with that, that can kind of put you in a weird headspace and also like some shame around your body because you just assume that it should do a certain set of things and it's not doing that. So in what ways do you find having conversations with women about that, and then sort of ways that we can ourselves feel a little bit more at ease when we're having trouble with things and need to go outside of the box to find support?
First, that's an amazing question, and all your note taking is amazing. I just wanted to say that. I would say that you're correct. People think that breastfeeding is like, I'm sorry if this is like, it's innate, like you're just gonna know, like just as soon as you give birth, you just know exactly what to do. And like you said, I kind of disagree. Like breastfeeding is natural, but you kind of have to teach teach yourself and kind of like guide, even like teach your baby how to do it, because you guys have to work together essentially. So like, yes, it's a natural thing, like this word natural that gets like sticked on food and stuff like that. Yes, it's natural, but you have to, educate yourself and teach, which is why like lactation specialists, IBCLCs, like midwives, all of us, and how all of our roles kind of intersect really is so important to educate your client about the fact that this may be a natural thing, but you may need some assistance. And here's how I can show you how it doesn't, you don't have to have so much pressure on yourself. Additionally, I think that, like I said, it just comes really back down to the education, because we even think pregnancy is natural. I had my daughter at 20, but I was 19. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going on. I just was like sitting around behind a desk, just pregnant. I didn't really have any education. So I think that the foundation should be educating our moms, should really just be education. That's what I think the foundation should just be like, educating people so that they kind of know, because people think they know, but they really don't. I don't know.
Could I piggyback on that? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Sorry,
Okay.
guys, I'm rambling. I'm just a little
No. What you said made you want to piggyback. So we in a good spot. Okay. So I feel like exactly what Khadijah said is correct. Like, the more education we get, the better off we are. Because you don't know what you don't know. That's the thing. A lot of these are brand new mamas, and you absolutely don't know what will work or what will not work. Pregnancy, breastfeeding, even after, is not a one size fit all. And I think that has been what society has taught us. Like, pregnancy goes this way, this happens that way. But as like a birth doula, like, my education starts way before you actually go to the hospital, where we're talking about those things, where we're having open conversation that, you know what, that's natural. Or you might want to ask your midwife about this, or let's bring this up to your provider. I actually partner, and I love what you do, Khadijah, because I partner with a local lactation specialist here, where I literally set my mamas up to have that person come in. Because if you are having a hospital birth, oftentimes the lactation specialist they're there all for 10, 15 minutes. It's real quick. It's a drive-by, you know what I mean? And it can feel overwhelming. Like, your hormones are doing things, you got this new baby, you're thinking like, what's next? So really setting yourself up for success and having a lactation specialist come to your house, especially in regards to breastfeeding, is so beneficial. You get that one-on-one experience. You get to talk to a person who will sit there, look at your nipples, see if they're flat, see if they're, there's different things that can happen. So the education portion from the very beginning, I think, is what sets that foundation for sure.
We have just
I was just going to say,
I wanted to acknowledge Tanya had her hand up.
Oh, lovely. I also want to sort of piggyback on that, and I'll figure out how to put my hand down. Sorry, I'm not totally, hang on, sorry. Okay, I'll figure that out in a second. To piggyback on that, I think, education is super important. And I think one of the things that I particularly educate on sometimes is unlearning things, right? Like, especially with breastfeeding, like, there's so many sort of expectations and standards, and people come in with all their clothes on, and then they just expose their breast just enough for the baby's mouth to fit on it while the baby's all wrapped up. And really what you need is to be completely naked and put your baby on your chest and have your baby be skin to skin, and sort of go back to what is natural and take away all these extra things that I think we think that we need. And we need this special pillow, and we need this special chair, and we need to have this nipple shield. And sometimes those things are absolutely necessary, but sometimes we just need to take it all away. And I don't know if sometimes I think people don't, that it's hard to sort of unlearn those things. And so I think some of the education piece comes in there too.
Tanya, did you want to ask your question? I wanted to make sure we acknowledged.
If Tanya doesn't go, or she could,
okay,
please. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, there you go. I'm sorry. I just want to say I am just so super excited that we're having this conversation, because me as a mother, a first-time mother at the age of 15, I did not have any information anything. And so I was kind of in the blind. And so I knew I wanted to breastfeed my daughter, but when I tried it, it seems like it was so unnatural to me, which it really wasn't, you know? And so I had to like figure out, okay, do I want this or do I don't? And so I was like, okay, I don't want this because it seemed unnatural, which is really natural, a natural feeling. But because I had limited information at that age. And so what I worry about is children or young people, young mothers that get pregnant and don't have the information to fully understand how they can help their child through this process. And so I remember my daughter, she was in the hospital and she wanted to breastfeed and she did. But her issue was her baby wasn't, I guess what y'all call it was, I guess it's called when they don't really take your breast in or whatever. And so that was frustrating her. And so she was like, she got frustrated because they show you in the hospital how to do it. But then after that, it's nothing else. It's like you on your own. And that's where the information and needs to continue past that point. You need somebody to walk you through, like, okay, you don't get frustrated, you know, still keep on, this is how you do it, and this is what you need to do, or whatever. So I think this is very important for us to know as Black women and as women, period. It is not even about race at this point. It's about women bonding with their children. And so trying to figure out how we get this information out to a wider population is what is really important to me.
And coming from the other side of the coin, you know, now the tables have turned, right? But there's a lot of pressure coming from family. Both my husband and I, we weren't breastfed. We didn't grow up in families that were breastfeeding anymore, which is kind of odd. I'm from the islands, and so I did get to see breastfeeding, but like not in my immediate family in the beginning. And so I didn't even know what it was supposed to look like. And we have to also remember that there are a couple generations removed of the natural feeling of breastfeeding. So I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. I mean, you know, you see the pictures and you're like this, but to be honest with you, that's one of the most uncomfortable ways to breastfeed. You know, what Katie was saying was like, actually lay that bad boy face first and they can control everything. And now you're not worried about choking your baby. Now you're not worried about pulling on your body and causing these other things to happen. But again, that would seem innate, because when you go back to the cave person date, that's probably what happened. They were laying there in pain or whatever, and baby crawls up, because the baby can crawl like immediately to that smell. They do this latch on thing. But again, if you think about it in a hospital setting, the first thing that happens is your baby is taken away, assessed, done all these things for liability reasons and all this other stuff. And I remember seeing that and saying, I don't want that. But on the other side of the coin is that there are those pressures to breastfeed in some communities. And then in other communities, it's the opposite, where it's a sign of stature that you can afford formula. But what I would say, coming from the work that I do, from an economic standpoint, formula is really expensive, which is why the person said, oh, you need to be on WIC. Well, why do I need to be on WIC when I got these bad boys that can support my baby fully for 2 years? And I can save thousands of dollars with my own breast if I just stick with it. That was the best advice I got with my second child, was just like, I know it was hard. I know no one told you that it hurts, but I know it does hurt, but it'll go away as you and your baby learn each other and it gets easier. That was kind of the advice actually Katie had given me. She's like, it does hurt. It does hurt in the beginning. You got to kind of sometimes toughen those bad boys up, but stick with it. I promise you, it'll get better. That made me feel like, oh, it does hurt. So when they say it's not supposed to hurt because you're doing it wrong, oh, okay, that kind of helping me understand my body was so important. That exactly what you had said, Kiana, this is kind of circling back to what you said. We're taught to think that because it's not working right, we're not right. And then comes the shame. That's not the truth. There isn't a right way per se. You got it. got to make the thing work. And so obviously education is key. Listening is key. Listening to what that person's lived experience is and giving them the advice, giving them the resource, or giving them the opportunity to say, is this normal or not? And for you to validate that everything you're experiencing is obviously normal, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't need lactation specialists, right? We wouldn't need someone to sit with you to help you through this. So for me, I'm very logical. So I immediately kind of put that together. I was like, something's not right. I need somebody to come help me with this baby. It can't be that easy. So anyway, I just wanted to add the perspective from the other side. I didn't see it. It didn't feel natural. Yes, Tanya, exactly. It didn't feel natural to me. I was like, this thing is wiggling. It's not staying still. Maybe they're too small. I'm too big. It's not for me. And the first thing my mom said, the first thing, the other folks that were with me, just get into formula. Formula is just as good. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Formula is just as good. And I'm not denying that. But I would like to give it a try. And so I just wanted to just add that perspective.
Thank you. Thank you.
Khadijah, you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to thank you, Miss Tanya, for what you said about having a child, talking about basically like teen mothers. I had a client who was 16 years old, and she went on to like breastfeed her child for at least 1 year, and I was really excited about that. And I think it's really important in the line of work that we all do, and it kind of just like circles back to what we've been talking about even before the event started, about like how pregnancy and being a mom and everyone's lifestyle, there's no one size fit all. So basically you have to kind of address the barriers that your client is facing. For example, if a client is 16, they may have to go back to school. So how can we speak with, I think it was maybe the counselor, so that, because you have to pump. So how can we address these barriers that certain moms face, like going back to work? I went back to work 6 weeks. I was poor, so I had to go back to work, but there are so many like different barriers that people face, and I think you have to, in your like line of care, you have to address those and formulate a plan that will work specifically for your client. Additionally, with this piggybacking on what Tashira said, as far as like stick with it, it gets easier. Like you said, it gets easier once they get older. Thinking about my own daughter, it got really easy. Like after like 6 months, I was like, oh, I'm doing it. Like 6, 7, 8 months. And then baby led wean comes, and she's eating more solid food, so she's not breastfeeding as much. And some moms will think, my breasts have stopped making milk. Well, no, it's like supply. We all know it's supply and demand. So your child is nursing less. So of course you're making less, but that doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. So approaching, care with like compassion and, like you said, listening and really understanding the entire scope of who your client is. Are they partnered? Do they have support? Because all of these things really do like affect the longevity of breastfeeding, the longevity of, even pediatric care. Like, do they have transportation to the doctor? All these different things. So it's like we also, in a way, like have to have like that kind of, not a social work background, but have to kind of like just look at it from like a bird's eye view, for our client to have like a successful journey with motherhood.
Yeah, awesome.
So that brings me to another question that I wanted to pose to anyone in the group. Feel free to answer this question. A lot of kind of what we've been saying so far, and I appreciate the fact that although we're all in kind of different positions within, coming from a different place in this conversation, that we all sort of have like the same foundation, which is women should be able to feel supported through whatever journey the pregnancy takes them on, right? So education is clearly needed. But then we also, I think, women don't know how to necessarily advocate for themselves, right? Because sometimes you don't know, and you don't know until you know that you don't know, right? So if you missed a huge swath of information that is somewhat supposed to be at the foundation, You don't know that you don't have it until you realize something's missing. And once you realize something is missing, when you try to go get medical care, when you try to go do these things, people are less inclined to listen to you. And they're less inclined to help you understand the ways in which you need to be supported and where you can find that support. So what advice would you have for women who maybe don't know how to advocate for themselves in terms of medical care during pregnancy, or just kind of in general terms? And also ways that within your specific field or specialty, you help women to advocate for themselves, or you advocate on their part. Just jump on in.
All right, I'll jump in because that's what I do. So as far as education, obviously I'm always going to say have a doula. But if a doula is not a part of your story for whatever reason, I think community is really, really big. We talk a little bit about the shame that can come with pregnancy and feeling different things and different emotions that come up. But what I found in this work is so many of us are going through similar things, but we kind of hold it to ourselves. Or we talk to our parents or those different people that are in our lives who kind of like, we talk about generations removed. They might blow it off like, with Tashira and the just do the formula. And I know for myself, my mom was just like, well, it was hard for me too. We kind of get blown off. So I feel like community where we can have open conversations about what's going on is super, super important if you don't have that advocacy piece for a doula. So in my line of work, I tell you about everything. We're going to talk about top to bottom, what to expect, the different things. So you have that knowledge, but oftentimes that's not an avenue people can take for whatever reason. So having community where you can openly have these conversations, I think is beneficial, because then what you didn't know. That I don't necessarily have to go right away when my water breaks. I do have a little bit of time to take my shower, eat something, because they're not going to let you eat when you get there. You have different things, you have opportunities. So I think just being open to having conversation with people who have gone through what you've gone through, not 20, 30 years ago, but a little closer, because, things change.
Katie, you had a question.
Not a question, but just to also, as we're at the phrase of the day, piggyback on that. I also 100% agree that doula support is just so essential for especially clients having their first baby. Having that person there who can help advocate for you, who is there solely for that purpose. I mean, of being your emotional support, but also helping you understand the ins and outs of things. In my role, I often end up doing both. But I certainly can't all the time. And so I think even at home, I will often recommend that clients have a doula as well, because I think just that extra support and that extra advocacy of someone that you can go to who's not your medical provider to ask questions and to find out what questions you should be asking, I think is super important. I agree that it's not accessible to all, and I wish that it could be. And so, I think finding ways to have more programs for doulas for all would just be something that would be just so awesome if we could do, especially in the hospital, but even not. I mean, even, having a postpartum doula when you're home with your baby for the first time after your midwife leaves is very, very scary. I was a midwife when I had my first child. And when the midwives left, I was like, what do I do now? I mean, I had no idea what to do. I knew all about pregnancy, but I knew nothing about child rearing. And I joke that the pregnancy is like the prologue to the book, right? Like it doesn't actually even start until you have the baby. And, in my line of work, we spend a lot of time talking about pregnancy preparation and planning for the birth, and then it's done, right? But really, that's when it all begins. And so I think for me, one thing I learned after having my first was focusing more on that second part, chapter 1, and starting from there and really helping people having an understanding what to do. But I do think it's just so important to have that support person, whether it's a doula, whether it's a friend who recently has gone through it, other moms that you can connect with. I think finding that community, like you said, building moms groups within neighborhoods or within apartment complexes or even online. I mean, you know, I feel like there's so many opportunities and so many ways for women to connect with each other and support each other through this process.
I'll put my hand down. I just figured out how to take my hand back down. So one thing that I found really important that I tell people that I'm more in touch with my body when I'm pregnant than I ever am. And I would say that if we could, what I would love for the biggest kind of piece in advocacy for me is that you trust yourself. We are born with this. That is something we are born with, this kind of instinct, this innate thing that something doesn't feel comfortable, whether it be, you know, emotionally, mentally, physically. And what has been great for me is I can identify when I feel anxious about something. And that's something that I think came innately, but is also removed from us by the way you're raised. So like if somebody from the time you're a child, no, go to Uncle so-and-so or go to auntie, and that's that choice, that feeling of being okay with being uncomfortable is taken away from you. And when we talk about unlearning behaviors, that's something. And one of the things that I can say around advocacy is obviously the permission to ask and to be able to be transparent and express anxiety. But if you are talking with folks, that those who are trying to conceive, those who have had issues with breastfeeding, or those who are in the middle of birth. It's only been 8 months ago that Katie was staring down my tunnel. And I remember telling her, can you just tell me what you see? I'm getting nervous. I feel this burning. And then I said, the way my brain works is if you can tell me what's happening, I can relax. And she's just like, well, that burning is your cervix is dilating. And I was like, okay. Can you tell me how far along I am? Would you like me to check? Yes, please check. Okay, you're not fully dilated, but I think your baby's trying to come. Do you want to try something? It was all along was choice. All along was her honoring that I was in touch with myself to know I'm panicking because of the pain. This is my third child. I should know that there's pain coming. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't know what's going on. Your brain shuts off and the other parts of your brains are working. But I was trying to get my frontal to start working again. And I'm like, just tell me what you see. Tell me what's happening. And she said, okay, I'm going to try something and you're going to hate me for it. And I remember thinking, I could never hate you, Katie. She was right. I was like, go away. Don't do that. And then 30 minutes later, my baby's out of my body. But I remember thinking, thank you for listening to me. And I want to say, I think in the video, I'm saying that like right after birth. Thank you for listening to me from the beginning to the end. Because I know that if I was anxious, I was going to hold my baby in because I didn't feel safe letting my baby out because I didn't know what was happening with my body. That's why I love midwifery. It's this idea that she knows what's going on in my body and is able to tell me all along the way. And this is what I was talking about. I trusted, my brain said, I don't feel good. This doesn't feel right. I trusted that I needed to ask the question to get my brain to feel right, to get my body to listen. That connection between my brain and my body helped me to have my baby. And I think if I were to be an advocate of advocacy, it would be trust that feeling that when you walked in that hospital, it didn't feel good to you. Ask the questions, ask for a different nurse, ask if you can go home, say you're going home, whatever it is. And that's the reason why I chose a home birth, is because I knew that I had the option to go to the hospital if I needed to. If I'm at the hospital, they almost make you feel like ashamed that you want to go back home because you don't feel comfortable, right? And so that's where I start with advocacy, not even with what questions to ask or education. It's just that you have it in you, listen to that voice. And once we get folks to start connecting with that voice that has been taken away from us for so long, I believe that things will start to flow and advocacy will come naturally. Pie in the sky thoughts though.
No, and I just want to piggyback. Thank you for sharing that. There's so much, I think, freedom in knowing that you have the right to ask, right? Because we kind of get into this headspace that says, well, this person is a doctor, they went to college for 4 years, they went to medical school, they did a 2-year residency, they went to school for da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and all of the things, right? They know all of the things about all of the things. And so if this person tells you, you're not really in pain, it's not really that bad, it shouldn't hurt. Just go get the formula. Where there's nothing wrong, then we then doubt ourselves, right? We then feel like, well, maybe we're making it up, or maybe we're making a bigger deal out of it than we should be making out of it, as opposed to, no, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm having pain, I'm having whatever. And I need you to work with me to make me comfortable in knowing what is causing that and what my options are. And a lot of times, I mean, and we just know statistically that, you know, people in marginalized communities, they get less consistent medical care, right? And then you add, you know, add more margins to that. So if you're a Black woman, you're already probably getting a lower standard of care than someone else. Then if you're obese, it goes down. If you're LGBTQIA, it could go down. If you're an Indigenous or a Hispanic woman, it could go down. If you're a disabled person, it goes down. And so there are all these layers between you and your medical person who should be listening to you and helping you figure out what the issues are. And we're made to think, well, if they don't think it's a big deal, then it's probably not a big deal. So although I don't necessarily consider myself an advocate per se, what I would like to just let people know is that you have the right to ask a question. And if the answer to that question is not satisfactory, ask it again. And if it's still not satisfactory, ask someone else. You have the right as a person seeking medical treatment to get a quality standard of care. And if where you're not, if you, that may mean that you need to change your physician. That may mean that you need to change your plan to have your baby, or that you need to change the place where you're having your baby, or that you may need to find, you know, systems of support outside of maybe what your general practitioner, your OBGYN offers, but that you absolutely have the right to say, I'm not comfortable with this. And for that reason, I need to have more answers. And if you can't give me those answers, I have to go somewhere else to get those answers. Absolutely. And I, that's kind of a long-winded way around, but does anyone have anything sort of in relation to that they would like to offer?
I was just gonna say that, let me lower my hand, figured out how to do that. I was gonna say that I feel like medical bias really comes from, and we can talk about like the racial aspect, it really comes from when we were enslaved. And when, I mean, I'm not sure, I've seen so many medical books that explain that Black people or people of color, we don't experience pain the same as our white counterparts. So for me, I've often had to overperform my illness. Like I cannot, like you have to, like it's so much anxiety walking in to these traditional medical entities, right? Hospitals, maybe your primary care provider, and if there's so much anxiety building up because you know that you have to overperform. And one thing I always like to equip my clients with, I like to say, like, tell them to put that in your chart. And what I found is when I tell them to say that, usually the provider sometimes backs up and asks more questions. So you say you can't breathe. Oh, really? So, like stuff, stuff like that. Also, I think that more, I wish that more hospitals and more medical agencies would sit in and listen to these conversations, because like we're fighting the good fight as advocates, we're fighting as midwives and things like that. But the other way, I'm sorry. These systems that the base population goes into have no idea of what disparities people face, what barriers people face. So I feel like more I'm so glad the senator's here, because I see him as a political entity, and he's here to listen. And I feel like more directors of hospitals should come in and listen to what we have to say, and also what people seeking care have to say, and really listen, because of course you get those like little comment cards, but you know, there really needs to be like a town hall so that people can really share what's going on, and people really need to listen.
I would like to add that that is one of the reasons I chose midwifery. So a little known fact is that I used to train scribes in hospitals. So that way they could accompany an emergency room doctor. The doctor could then focus solely on the client while a person in the background is taking the notes. And it's this idea to give the doctor back time to dedicate to the client. Some people like it, some people don't. I thought it was a genius idea, but whatever. But what I did see was this idea of treat 'em and street 'em, and that it's a business, and that there's a lot of money involved, a lot of liability involved. There's so many factors that go into what happens in institutions, hospitals. That said, I love midwifery because I knew that there was dedicated time to listen to me and to me only. You know, there's not a computer out, it's listening to me, answering my questions. There's not a huge rush unless there's a call for a baby to be born, but I love seeing that because it's going to be my turn soon. And so that's a big part of the advocacy for me, is that I was able to get my time. I was able to, so here's the thing. I don't think I would ever have been able to have like a doula. My personality wouldn't have allowed it. My doula was my partner, and that was really helpful for me, and he worked really hard to make sure that he could. I remember this last baby, he was holding my leg, and I wanted to get this on video for whatever reason. My brain was fixated on that. And then it was time, and he went to go let go of my leg, and I was like, no, don't let go. And I didn't have to say much because we're so in tune that I kind of just gave him the signal, like, I'm so sorry, we're just not going to catch it on video. But I remember thinking, like, for me, it would have been hard to have a doula because I'm accommodating. I start apologizing, and all of a sudden I'm holding in my baby because I'm trying to accommodate everyone else in the room. And that's what I envisioned in the hospital, that I didn't want to scream loud. I didn't want to do any of these things because I just don't want to inconvenience anyone. And you have to think about that. That's why I think the options are so helpful. Yes, go to the doctor. If you're high anxiety and you know that you kind of succumb to this idea that life-saving measures can only happen at the hospital, and you're going to need them because you're not ready, I think that that's okay. But I also just love the idea of having the option, knowing that this person is solely dedicated to me right there. Katie contingency planned with me. She's just like, you and 2 other moms might be giving birth. When she walked in the room, she's like, guess what? You're the only one today, because the other ones already get, like I was able to, she knew where I was, and I was like, hey, if you need to leave, this is my 3rd time. I think I could do it by myself if I needed to, but I knew I had a contingency plan. I remember she said, if you call and we're too close, put me on speaker so I can hear your voice, because when I hear your voice, I know where you are just by the sound of your voice. It's that kind of thing that made me trust that my voice is going to tell you when my baby's coming. And so I just think, like, midwifery is, I push it. I don't push it too hard, but I push it. It's to counteract what you guys are talking about, what the hospital setting looks like. It is good for some people. It's not great for others. And so that part of advocacy is painting that picture of what it looked like for me. I know that I've been in other cohorts where people didn't have such great experiences, not because necessarily the midwifery wasn't great, but it wasn't great for them. And so I just want to make sure I put that out there, that while I'm a huge proponent, it's not for everybody, but I do think that it's important that we push legislatively for options, because there are parts of the world where it's not, you can't do it. And I was fortunate to move to a place that we could. So that's been, great.
Did anyone else have anything they wanted to say in regards to that? Okay.
I can actually very quickly just want to say I don't have much to say because Toshira says it all. So thank you so much, Toshira. You're the best advocate we could have.
So then I would like to pose this question. What what ways do you think that general members of the community, we've all heard the phrase that it takes a village, right? So in what ways do you think the village could be providing more support for women who are maybe trying to get pregnant, who are expecting, and then post-delivery? In what ways have you seen that women could use additional support?
I'll go first again. All right, so I actually live in a state where at home births is not they happen, but we're under wraps with that. So what I've seen in my community is we come together in our own area of genius. So my area of genius is pregnancy and labor and actual birth. But I have other people in my community that I not only recommend, but start the introduction, start the conversation with postpartum doula or a lactation specialist. Oftentimes me and my lactation person, we go in that postpartum visit just to make sure my mama feels very comfortable. So for us here, given what we are allowed to do in this state, we kind of just stay in our wheelhouse, but together, if that makes sense. That way, no one person is trying to do all the things. I'm not trying to carry you from birth to labor to after to forever. Like, you don't lose me, but I have somebody who knows all that she knows is lactation. So that's the person you need to talk to about breastfeeding. I have another person who's the baby whisperer. That's who you need at nighttime, not me, because my baby 15, I don't know what to do with a baby at this point. So I feel like community and just leaning on each other, especially in birth work, I found is very, very, is a lot easier than other areas of, I guess, careers and things like that. So I feel like here we really lean on each other, and where you are specifically, that's your scope of genius.
From the mom side, I think creating forums and spaces for forums for information is key. Maybe from like our small town, but I think it starts there. I think like, for instance, I think we were really lucky because of Marcus's position, so people knew who we were. But when we had the baby, I didn't have to cook for 3 weeks. Food just landed on my doorstep, and that is like amazing. And it's so helpful because I had 2 other kids that needed to eat. That alone was helpful, that understanding. I let my neighbors know, hey, if you hear a holler, don't call anybody, I'm having a baby. And I remember, the neighbors said, oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure, let them know they can park in my place. That smaller insular community. But I know that what's really helpful that has been created with the midwife groups or other mommy groups is being able to ask like questions to the community, because not all of us have access to someone that's open or even maybe even close with their midwife. Maybe it was like a one-time thing. That's the other thing, because for those who do give birth in hospitals, they may not have a connection with the person that was on call at the time that they were there and didn't have choice there. But I think creating forums, creating space, and then also letting us know what is needed from us to make something happen. I know that Katie does a lot of activism around, hey, we may need to go and put up some signs and rally about this piece of information or legislation, or, also I think we need to start putting data out. We talk about infant mortality, we talk about mommy mortality, but I think that's what scares people. And then so they just assuming that people are dying at home, but that's not what happens, right? That's not what happens. They're dying in hospitals. And so that doesn't, I'm not saying that there's the correlation. That's not what I'm trying to say. I don't have the data there. But what I can say is I think putting the information out where people can access it is also key. So, and again, I know we have to, you always have to be careful what side of the fence you're on and all this other stuff politically, but I just always think the information, if the information's there, then we don't have an excuse.
Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all that everyone has said. And I also think thinking of it from more of a macro standpoint is like, we just really need to change the culture around pregnancy, around birth, around being a mom. I mean, and that's huge, right? Like we can't do that by ourselves, but collectively, you know, we have to start somewhere. And I think, you know, the fact that like, I mean, it's so incredible now in DC, you actually get 16 weeks of paid leave, right? But that's like still not enough, right? Like, I mean, our countries in Europe, they get 6 months to a year of paid leave plus paternity leave, and like, and it's all paid, and like, you know, it's like it's baffling to me how we're supposed to do all of this, right? And it's like it needs to start. I mean, it needs to start from the bottom, but like we have to change the top in order for it to work for us, because when we're expected to go back to work at 6 weeks because we can't, you know, we're too poor to not, like that's a problem. And like, you know, like if we can change the language at the top that you know, this is important, and that, you know, parenthood is important, whether it's motherhood, fatherhood, whatever, like that's where things really need to change. And you know, by the work that we do, we can do it, see it in small pieces, but if more of us can do this and more of us can get that change up, then hopefully we can change it, you know, all the way up.
I 100% agree. I do. Am I muted? Oh, I 100% agree. I was just gonna say, I call it snapback culture because I see it on social media all the time. A woman has a baby. I think I'm going crazy because I'm like, and then the next day they're posting a picture of their stomach saying I snap back, because I think like we don't take pregnancy, like what Katie said, we don't take it seriously enough. It's just, oh, you had a baby, now I'm back. No, like your brain is not okay right now. Like you went through a major life change. Like, I don't know if it's American culture, I don't know what it is, but we just do not take pregnancy and the postpartum period seriously enough. And you know, talking about community, you know, I found like when I had my daughter, a lot of people come over and you know, and hold her and just like marvel at her and stuff like that. And I just wanted, I think there needs to be more recognition around like giving birth as this, I like to do like gestures like giving birth as this amazing it's a big life event, right? As the insurance calls it. Like it's a very serious matter. Like it really is. And it's like you come and hold my baby. And I feel like as far as community, there needs to be more stressing of like asking the mom what she needs, which is why like postpartum doulas are so important for that 4th trimester period, where you're using peri bottles and you can barely walk and you're constipated and you feel like someone's stabbing you in your stomach. So I feel like there needs to be more emphasis on mother care as well, like how there is in other cultures where like the mom is treated as a goddess, not as a robot who just pushed your baby out, essentially. It's okay not to snap back.
I want to say something to that because that's all that I do. Okay, so it's a transformation. You will never be the person you were before you had your baby. You'll never be that person again. And there is that thought that you're snapping back to this person, but you'll never be that person. There's a level of mourning of who you were, even if this is your 4th or your 5th baby. Like you're still, every single time you change a little bit more. So just having that thought and having everything be about you. Like I tell my mamas a lot and they laugh every time I say it. I say, you have a lot of people that'll care about your baby. I'm not one of those people, and I mean that in the most respectful way. I'm here for you. You have everybody else that's gonna be, they're not even gonna pay you any attention. I remember my very last birthday before I gave birth to my daughter, it was a baby shower. Like my birthday was a baby shower. Like everybody's gonna care all about your baby, and that's wonderful. But when mama's okay, then the baby will be fine. So I put heavy emphasis on the self-care view of taking the time to process, of taking the time to unpack your birth story. I know everybody's not a fan of bye. Thank you for coming.
I just wanted to really quickly, Senator Augustine, thank you so much. I was going to give you a, big thank you at the end, but you got to cut out. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for listening. He dropped some information in the chat. I'm going to tell you, I love my senator. I love my senator. Okay. So he left his information. He left his contact information. He will answer the phone. I've called him a few times. So if there's anything that he can do, he is definitely available. So thank you so much, Senator Augustine, for coming out. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you. I really have just really appreciated all that's been shared. And I did put my email and phone number in the chat. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of this very important conversation. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Danelle, because I cut you right off, but I wanted to make sure that I thanked him for coming because I'm sure he had a ton of other stuff that he could have been doing.
Yeah, no, but that was just the gist. I wanted to piggyback our keyword today, piggyback on Khadijah, that it is lost upon us the whole transformation period of having a baby. I was just writing an article for one of my mamas talking about like there's the wound that happens after you have a baby, whether you have a cesarean or you have a vaginal birth. Like there's a wound you can see with a cesarean, but there's a wound still inside you when you have a vaginal birth. And just really taking the time to honor your body, honor where you are, honor like what's going on is so important. And I think that part is really, really lost. That's really, really lost. Like we're just expecting moms to like have their baby and then go back to work or keep doing all the things. Or, if you have a husband, he's like on the time clock, 6 weeks now, come on, that sort of thing. She's like, yeah. But, it's really just taking the time to honor that transformation because it is a transformation and you won't be that person ever again that you were when you were pregnant and before pregnancy.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Tashira.
I just wanted to quickly say that might be another component that I'm not saying we're forgetting, but it's something to think about, that if you're not going at it alone and there's a partner involved in your baby care, I think it's also important that we include or have a separate space for them as well. Reason being is like the connection piece. How can I help? How am I not being helpful? Because of the work that I do, a lot of victimization occurs during pregnancy and shortly after. And that's something that we have to talk with, the survivors that we serve, that it's not you, it's that your focus has changed or you've shifted and you had to start thinking about yourself or your baby. And now your partner is no longer the in the spotlight. There's a lot of things that occur, and that that's another thing to talk about, is the changing dynamics in the relationship. And I think that there is space to say that it can be a good thing. But again, it's the prep and it's the education, that talking about postpartum depression, talking about signs and symptoms of even, like infection, for instance, people don't think about those things that can happen after cesareans or even vaginal births. We don't talk about those things and how it affects partner or how partner can assist. Because I do think I hope I'm one of those hopeless romantics. And so I would hope that everyone wants to be a part of that. And I think about babies and how sometimes the partner feels rejected by the baby, or rejected by their partner and the baby. They don't feel like there's use. And it's just like, oh, it would be so helpful if you did this, this, and this. And so just thinking about that as well, and maybe even creating those community forums to help partners, be better a co-parent, things as such like that. Just another point that we really haven't talked about, but something to just throw in there, especially as my partner's here watching. He's stellar, and I lucked out in that way. He does a lot of research, and I remember he'd keep asking me if I was okay. And finally I was like, why do you keep asking me that? I was like, I'm fine. But he'd done all this kind of research around keeping an eye on the postpartum depression. Doesn't come necessarily because the mom is sad on purpose. It's your hormones are like doing. And, my hair started to fall out and I was like, what is going on? I didn't expect it. I didn't know. But again, thankfully, and at this point, we don't really have an excuse. Google is at our fingertips. And so there is a lot of information. But again, these forums are helpful, especially for people of color. We do better when we speak verbally. All the stuff and throwing all the stuff for us to read, I don't have time for that. Just tell me what you want to tell me. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that I think the family unit would be another something to focus on support-wise.
I had a friend who actually, I was so hopeful she was going to come. And the ironic part of the whole conversation is she had a baby at 1:05 this morning. Like, I texted her last night because I had told her about the event. I said, I'm going to send you all the information because she wasn't due until next week. So I'm going to send you the information if you're feeling up to it, because she was really excited and motivated. And she was like, if I'm up, and I'm like, if you're up, you want to log on. And then she said, well, I'm actually dilated 8 centimeters. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And then her husband, who was my coworker, texted me this morning and said she had a baby. Because just being a part of a village is an amazing thing. Like, I'm already now like, okay, so I'm a cook and I'm gonna take them some food because they have 2 other girls. They gotta eat. And she gotta eat. And he gotta eat. You know what I mean? And so being a part of a village, I think, is something that we can all do, even in small ways, even in just, let me take the baby for an hour so you can take a nap. Or let me come over and help you clean. Let me help you with laundry. Let me help you with like the things that I know you can't really give 100% now that you have had your baby. And the other thing that I would sort of say is just like making sure that we're honoring the humanity of women throughout their pregnancy. Particularly, I think, after birth, because like Khadijah and like Danae were saying, where people get completely gassed up about the baby. But like, what about, I got into an actual argument with my friend because I was like, girl, I ain't think about that baby. I'm here for you. Like, I've known you since I was 7. This baby is brand new. I got time to get to know them. But you're my friend. How is my friend? How are you feeling? What do you need outside of being a mommy? So recognizing like the humanity of the person who cooked the baby for 40 weeks, and then just finding ways to support as you can. You can't expect everything from everybody. I don't expect all my friends to come over and cook for me, but like my mom will, my aunties will, you know what I mean? And those are the ways that we can kind of step in and help support. Oh, he left. We had Councilman Wiley. He's right over in the next town. He was on the call. Yeah. So actually, I want to address this. So Tanya said after she had her baby, the doctor left an instrument and it actually prevented her from being able to have more children. I am mortified that happened. And that is such a huge part of why I wanted to have this conversation, because there are so many ways that we are being harmed when we should be being loved on and being cared for. And I remember hearing a story about Serena Williams, who, she has issues with blood clots and things like that. And when she was having her baby, she was experiencing some trouble. She was having trouble breathing, and she's telling them, I can't breathe and I'm having issues. And they did not respond. And I think, well, if that's happening to Serena Williams, who's probably one of the most famous women on the planet, who has, an abundance of money and a huge platform, if this is happening to her, it's happening more than we think. It's happening. And one of the things that I think we kind of keep circling back to is that so much of being able to advocate for yourself is having information, and is really knowing that you have the right to ask for things and to say what you need and what you want. And when you're not getting it, you have a right to go somewhere else and get it. Oh, I have loved this conversation. Is there anything that we missed? Is there anything that anyone else would like to contribute? Because I could do this all day. I ain't got nothing to do till 4. I'm free. But I want to make sure that we have room to acknowledge everything that everyone wanted to say in the in the forum.
No, this was lovely. And what it did was invigorate me and let me know that we have lots more work to do, lots of advocacy, lots of just sharing to hopefully open up more windows, doors, platforms for people to continue having people in the safest way and most comfortable way possible. So I really appreciate you, inviting me, little old me screaming in my house 3 times in Brentwood. I promise I'm not killing the baby, I'm having it, to be here. And if you or anyone in the town or anywhere have questions or need a lead, want a name of a really great midwife or 2, I got you. Because it, at minimum, even having someone talk to you and just let you know what you're going through is normal in itself is helpful. And so I really appreciate you like opening this door, or at least opening the window to let people know that there are others out there just like them. And hopefully you guys can post this somewhere so people can take an opportunity to look and see what we're talking about, and maybe even create resource pages, just things like that hopefully will bring people to a space of healing and, making sure that their journey is just as great as mine have been thus far.
I agree 100%. This was great. It's needed. And I'm thinking about moving to Brentwood. I didn't want to tell anybody, but Brentwood, because I am stressed out in DC. I'm just super grateful that this is being taken seriously. I'm super grateful to sit amongst all of you, and just for us to have this, just like a conversation wasn't too bad. It seemed like, it was great. I'm really grateful. And I hope that this could be shared and more people have the opportunity to play it back so they can really just hear just as our words and our personal experiences, our professional experiences, and how they all collide. Thank you guys.
I guess
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
No.
All right. I just thank you so much. This was wonderful to be a part of this conversation. I'm honored to be with all of you beautiful, amazing women who have all just done such great things with your life. Toshira, any moment I get to spend with you is just such a joy. And I just appreciate all that you all are doing for your community. I appreciate being asked to be a part of this as a white person. And I just thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to be with you all and to support you all and offer what I can to this community. Thank you so much.
I was just going to say piggyback for the last time in this meeting, but this was amazing. I could talk birth all day long. I feel like it's just our birth and motherhood and just women, that's what it's all about. So I appreciate being able to be here, connect with you ladies. If at all you ever want to do this again, I'm always available. Send me an email. I'm happy to even have this conversation. So thank you again.
I do want to take a second and offer the floor to my colleague, Councilmember Monroe, and just if he would like to say anything.
Cooper is screaming in the background.
Oh, so he may not say anything.
He probably won't say anything because you're just going to hear Cooper calling mom. He says "da," and "da" applies to dad and mom. So I can hear him saying "da."
Oh, so he's looking for you. Okay.
Yeah.
I am so overwhelmed. I'm happy I've made it through the whole thing, not crying, but I'm probably going to cry as soon as we get off. But I am so overwhelmed. Whenever women step into spaces to support other women, there's a little part of me on the inside that's just like screaming, like fist up, full on, like cheerleader, because we need it. It is so needed. And I thank each of you from the bottom of my heart, Lord, for agreeing to be a part of this panel, and for everything that you offer today. And I now consider y'all a part of my community. I hope you consider me a part of yours. Monique is on the call. Did you have anything you wanted to say? Or Tanya Harrison, she was our vice mayor last term, and she has been such an amazing help to me since being elected. So did either of you ladies want to say anything before we wrap up?
I was going to let Monique go first, but I just want to say thank you, Councilmember Taylor, for bringing this much needed conversation to our community. Again, like I said, 40 something years ago, I didn't have this. And so if we can help and change lives moving forward, I think it's amazing, you know. And so whatever I can do to be of assistance or be a partaker in educating our people. And when I say our people, I'm just saying women, period, because this is major. Like, I won't be able to have another child, but I do know that I will be able to be a blessing to other women that can have children, you know, by getting this information out. And so I just thank you and I honor you for bringing this conversation. And I'm looking forward to the great things that you'll be doing moving forward. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Monique, did you have anything you wanted to offer? Oh, she said it was a wonderful thing. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for giving your time. I hope that this will not be the last conversation that we have like this. And I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I recorded it. I thank y'all for reminding me because I be slipping sometimes. So hopefully we'll be able to share this on our social media platforms and on our, you know, our website and things like that. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And I'm going to let y'all go. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
Okay.